Madam Chair, it's great to be here today because for most of our constituents in Brooklyn, our relationship to this issue comes to us by way of television sometimes. For me, Bonanza comes to mind, and motion pictures. However, we can relate to the work of our ranchers and small business entrepreneurs in regards to the provision of foods for our communities. And so this is a very important hearing here today. On a serious note, I want to personally thank you, Mr. Allred, for testifying before us today, and I hope that by the end of the hearing, I will be more informed on how your agency is meeting the needs of these small businesses. I understand that some areas of the West, increased drilling has turned once spectacular landscapes into industrial-like zones. I'd like to get a sense from you of what evidence you have gathered in your agency that substantiates where there's been severe habitat destruction.
Congresswoman, one of the things that I think, again, we have to understand is that when we talk about the total amount of federal lands that are involved in oil and gas, it's a very small amount. That doesn't mean it's not important. And we're going to make darn sure, and again, from my background as an environmental administrator, regulator, I'm particularly concerned that what we do right. But I think we also have to understand that most of the businesses that are involved in oil and gas are small businesses. They are not the big mega companies that people like to talk about with oil and gas. I also think it's important to understand that there are a lot of other pressures that are impacting those federal lands, and I just mentioned invasive species and fire. That has a huge impact on our federal lands and on small businesses. When one of these areas burns out, like happened in Utah and Idaho, it had a tremendous impact on those rural communities and rural businesses.
Well, what is it that your recommendations, after knowing that this is something that happens, annually, perhaps it's a natural occurrence, sometimes it's accidents, sometimes it's carelessness on behalf of our citizenry. What best practices do you believe must be put in place to turn that around as quickly as possible, so that we're all participating in the remediation and the rehabilitation of these areas?
Fire generally occurs because of it occurs naturally. In fact, most of the big fires were lightning caused. But the reason they burn like they do is because of fuels that normally were not there. The sagebrush habitats in the western habitats are generally what we call fire regime habitats. They're used to fire. What has happened is the vegetation has changed so much that fires are so hotter that they kill everything. They in effect sterilize the land. Fuels management is important. Dealing with the cheatgrass and the invasive species is particularly important. It costs a lot of money, and frankly, we and state governments are not able to deal with that issue effectively.
Will the gentlelady yield for a second?
Certainly.
Mr. Secretary, can you tell me what responsibilities energy firms have to reclaim all drilling sites, and is the department enforcing this?
Madam Chairwoman, they have an absolute responsibility to reclaim those sites, and we will not relieve their bond or let them do other activities until it is done. We actually place requirements on when it has to be done, and we're getting better at that. Now, the government is like any other organization. It has problems. You have a lot of people. Anytime you deal with lots of people, you have to manage those people. We're learning a lot, and I think that over the last couple of years that I've been associated with this agency, practices have improved substantially. That's been one of my objectives. I think we are doing a good job now.
Do you have the manpower based on the General Accounting Office report 2005?
I think we could do more if we had more manpower, and you will see, I think, in the 2009 budget and at least recommendations for 2010, I think you will see some additional requests
Thank
for
you.
these type of manpower.
Thank you for yielding.
No problem, Madam Chair. Just sort of on the note that the chairwoman has struck here, it's my understanding that the impacts of the industrial drilling and oil and gas development, the impacts range from being site-specific, for example, removing several acres of vegetation at an individual well pad, to those affecting a much larger area, such as fragmenting tens of thousands of acres of crucial winter range for mule deer. We talk about manpower, but we know, what the causes are and what the effects are. What I'm not getting from you is specifically how we're going to go about addressing it. What is required? What level of cooperation between state and federal government? Who in the agency will be responsible for being proactive here? Because we're at the stage where we understand what the impacts are. We now want to jettison ourselves into the 21st century to be much more proactive around that. And just in closing, if we can get some response.
I would be glad to. Government has to have a name for everything, so we have a name we call Healthy Lands, and that's involves a variety of factors, but one of them is to look at how we do not only oil and gas, but other activities as well, to identify, for example, migration routes, and to make sure that as we authorize activities, that we don't fragment or interrupt those migration routes. And some of the newest plans that you see coming out are doing a much better job of that. It is a goal of ours to do that.